Hello! I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello, Herd, and welcome to another episode of NerdyVerse here at Nerd Herder Podcast. I'm your herd leader, or whatever, J-Dub.
I'm Boop, I think.
I don't know. I knew we had decided we would start using like our Twitter names, but then I was like, wait, am I still herd leader?
Well, here's the thing. I'm actually a metaphor for the atomic bomb.
Yes, apparently, I guess. Why and how?
I'm actually a 10-foot iguana.
Okay. You have no sense you're trying to make. You're just saying stuff.
I'm actually an irradiated giant turtle.
Okay. So, welcome to this madness.
Welcome to
It's
Gamera
another
Cast.
episode here in our Nerdyverse series where we talk about everything not Star Wars. We're very well known for our love of Star Wars. In fact, we're in the middle, or will be soon, in the middle of a series where we talk about all the things we love about the sequel trilogy. So, obviously, we love Star Wars, but we love other things too. Hence, today's episode that no one asked for,
You did.
all about Godzilla. Yeah, I'm literally
Yeah,
the only one
You wanted to do this one, and I'm also
for a
pretty sure that
long
Kev loved it
time.
too.
Yeah, so wanted to do this episode way back when Godzilla versus King Kong came out. If you can remember, that did happen this
Yes,
year.
it did. Oh man.
Um,
Time is
right?
moving forward. What the?
And so, but due to whatever scheduling, we were able to do our episode about Godzilla versus King Kong, and then quickly moved on to other things. But planning to do this episode was always a thing. Well, luckily, Godzilla, the franchise, the lizard himself, however you choose to see
Yes.
it, celebrated 67 years just a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
And so I figured what better time than on the anniversary or around about the anniversary,
Close
um,
enough to the anniversary.
close enough to the anniversary to talk about Godzilla. Because I really like these movies,
Yeah.
kaiju films. I like Godzilla in particular. Arguably the most well known kaiju, arguably most people's favorite Japanese thing. Like the average person in America definitely knows what and who Godzilla is.
Yes.
Like that's an accomplishment. That's even if they've never seen it in movies. Like this is the most Japanese thing I think is that most people get.
Yeah.
Like
I
anime,
agree.
too weird. Godzilla, cool.
Just weird enough.
Right,
And
just weird enough.
this was another one of those things that I didn't really experience until I met you.
That's fair.
I of course had, a reference point to who Godzilla was, what
Mhm.
he was. I knew of the films. I had seen Godzilla 2000,
Mhm.
which some may argue is not exactly a Godzilla movie. But I
No, hang on. So you saying Godzilla 2000? That's not the movie you're thinking
okay,
of.
Matthew Broderick Godzilla.
Yeah,
What's
just
that movie?
Godzilla. It's just
It's
Godzilla.
just Godzilla.
And that's
Okay.
1998, by the way.
Whatever, man. I
Godzilla
don't
2000.
remember.
No, Godzilla. You've got to tread carefully. Godzilla 2000 is a completely different film and probably one of my favorites.
We rented it from Blockbuster. That's all
Yeah.
I know.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's what brought it back into mainstream conversation. Again, whether or not most people had a point of reference, the 90s blew up the Godzilla brand again,
like
anew,
Batman.
right? Literally, Toho brought Godzilla out of retirement in response to that film.
To be
So
like, we can do it better.
literally, and so, yeah, the '90s, the late '90s especially, were big for G-Man because I mean that's where he really culturally blew up, and not just blew up, but like very
Literally exploded.
evenly. You know, the original film, although released later in the U.S. theatrically, really didn't come to the States in physical form until many, many years later because nobody really like it's the older one. Who cares? Like,
Yeah.
it was really hard to get classic Godzilla films in America, so it's like the weirdo would know about it. A few people would know about it, but it wasn't like these were blockbuster films every summer or
Hmm.
anything like that for American audiences. Whereas um, from TriStar's Godzilla film in '98 and into the films in the Millennium series of Godzilla, um, those films were more widespread. In fact, Godzilla 2000 was specifically internationally released because of TriStar. Like, they literally wanted to put out there, hey, this is Godzilla. This is what we created.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
so totally different movie.
Yes, and I apologize for making an incorrect assumption.
You're fine.
It's fine.
It's just so yeah,
It doesn't matter.
98's just Godzilla.
It's just Godzilla.
Hmm.
It's not even Godzilla. It's Zilla.
And we'll talk. Yeah, absolutely. Actually,
Yeah,
and we'll talk about that.
we will talk about that.
Don't mishear. So for those listening, the movie is still Godzilla, but the creature is Zilla.
Is Zilla. That's why it looks weird.
We'll explain it.
It's a cousin.
No,
It's a foreign exchange student.
Yes.
There you go.
Accurate.
But yeah, I didn't watch the original. I didn't even watch the original movie until I met you.
Yeah.
It was the English dub.
So of everything like now, so like that said, now explain me a Godzilla briefly, like what's your understanding of Godzilla, the franchise and all that such?
Well, from what I understand, in Japan they like large things fighting other large things, which we do like that in America as well. But it seems like Japan has kind of cornered the market on the big thing fighting the other big thing. Sometimes it's robots, sometimes it's creatures, sometimes it's just a dude that can get real big. Um, Sometimes it's a lot of robots that get together and they make an even bigger robot.
Mm-hmm.
But they seem to really know what they're doing over there. What with the big things fighting the other big things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my understanding of what it was for the longest time. Is just a big monster. That's what a kaiju is.
Mm-hmm.
Kaiju is big thing, fight other big thing, which I've now realized is incorrect.
Not terribly. I mean,
It's a specific big thing fighting another specific big thing.
I guess I mean you're pretty much there on what kaiju films are
Yeah.
about. It is at the heart of it about larger than life creatures
Hmm.
fighting it out, and usually it is creatures. That's usually the big thing with kaiju is it's a giant monster.
Yeah.
Um, but generally, the plot of most of them can be boiled down to a fight between monsters,
Yeah.
not necessarily good and evil.
No.
Although a lot of series like Ultraman really got into that and would be very familiar because Ultraman, Super Sentai are all
Hmm.
adjacent of like what most Americans would know as Power Rangers.
Kamen Rider.
Yeah, actually, and so yeah, so and even Power Rangers is that kaiju stuff. It gets weird.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely Voltron-esque.
yeah, and so I think the mainstays of kaiju-ness is you have to have a giant monster at least,
Kaiju-deism, please.
preferably two, because who else is it going to fight? The
Right.
military? That's a joke.
That's already happened a few times.
So giant
Um,
monster movies.
Giant monster movies and also man, radiation. We
Mm-hmm.
done some stuff. It I think that is the first film in its essence, at least in my opinion. It's not just giant monster man. Monster man, monster lizard. It is a metaphor for how we screwed up another country by dropping an atomic bomb on them,
Mm-hmm.
and the fallout literally from that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think if you watch the first movie and you don't get that, then you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a big mainstay of Godzilla is Godzilla originally and at various points in the franchise has been a political statement.
Yeah, as it
Um,
should be.
and I guess originally a political statement that really evolved into a worldview statement
Hmm.
because Godzilla and its mythos really does get into everything. Like whereas it starts off very much as this represents an enemy, this represents an evil thing done
Hmm.
to a people in a country. It definitely evolves to no, this involves all of us. Involves the world. We have to be more responsible with resources. We have to be kinder to our ancestors and to the
Be
world,
nice to big moths.
um, so it definitely gets to a point where it applies to everyone. You
Yeah.
can't say that it's just a Japanese cultural icon, although you would be right in assuming that it is first and foremost a Japanese cultural icon.
Yeah.
Uh, Godzilla's gone on to, speak to the world.
He's thrown out the first pitch at a baseball game.
And it's like, I mean, he's been in a commercial with Shaq, I think,
Right?
even, or some basketball player. Like I almost everyone, if you Google or not Google, if you go to Twitter and do the search bar for the gifs and type in Godzilla, one of the first ones you'll see is him putting on glasses, like sports glasses. It like that's
He
from a
eats the deal with it.
commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like he's permeated world culture, and I think part of it's because he has a world message throughout
Yeah.
the series. And that's not to say all kaiju films are preachy. At times, Godzilla can be a little preachy, but like,
Yeah.
it's not to say that all giant monster movies are an allegory for war or for nuclear weapons or for anything. Sometimes, like the Toho's Kong, right?
Hmm.
It's just about a giant monkey fighting a robot monkey.
Love
Like
it.
it's not
Love it so
it's
much.
not preachy at
Yeah,
all.
and you get movies like that, and you get movies like Mechagodzilla, where it's just, ooh,
Um
this is weird.
well, there's a little bit of stuff with that one.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of sense to that one, but like definitely with so like you have kaiju that were meant to entertain and teach, and then you have kaiju that were meant to entertain. The likes of Gamera would definitely be a kaiju created to entertain.
Yes.
Those are all great and fun movies in the Gamera series. It's a giant turtle, you can't beat it, right? Um, and yeah, it's Gamera, the like the friend of children or whatever. Like he has this nickname. Like he cares about kids.
What?
Like that's always his thing, right? So he is the superhero that uh kids look up to, and he knows he's the kid's favorite.
Gamera is my role model.
So, like, there's so many times where he's just like, "Hey, that's a cool kid. I wonder what he's doing. Oh no, a monster! I must save him."
Don't
Um,
do drugs, kids. I'm Gamera.
and that's part of why Gamera's all entertainment, right? Is because it's
It's for
more targeted
kids.
at kids. Ultraman, it's much more targeted at kids and such. But Godzilla was not meant to be a kids movie, and there is a period where he gets very fun and family friendly. But by and large, a lot of Godzilla films have a
Yeah.
message to them,
And
or
then
or just at the very least take themselves seriously.
at the sometimes. I will say I can count on one hand how many Godzilla films I've watched.
List it.
Yeah. Okay. You ready? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. I've watched. I'm going to count them as one, but I've watched the English dub and the original Japanese
I don't think that's
Godzilla.
fair, but okay.
All right.
It's two very different films.
Okay. You're right. I'm gonna. Joe Bob American Man
Right.
is the main character in one of them.
Raymond Burr is.
Yes, Joe Bob American
Who
Man.
plays Steve Martin in the film. Not that Steve Martin.
Yes, he does.
Um,
It's that one. I've seen Godzilla versus Mothra.
which one?
I've seen the first one.
The like oldie one?
Yeah,
Okay.
we watched that together on VHS tape.
Oh yeah, that's one of the few I had.
There you go.
I still have actually.
I've seen Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla,
Mm-hmm.
the one with the ape men
Mm-hmm.
in space.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
Mhm.
seen Godzilla kill all monsters at your
Mhm.
behest, and boy is that movie weird.
Kill all monsters?
Or isn't that what it's called?
Explain the plot to me, so because some of
I
them
barely
blend
understand it
together.
myself. So it's
Is it an
Godzilla.
old one?
It's the one where Zilla shows up. It's the 2000s
Oh no,
one.
Final Wars.
Final Wars.
Kill All
Okay.
Monsters. I don't know if you know, but that's like that is an actual name
Yeah.
of a Godzilla
I
movie,
didn't.
but very different movie.
So I need to watch that one.
Funnily enough, Destroy All Monsters is what it is, but that was at the time the end of that era's Godzilla.
Okay.
Much like Final Wars was the end of, in my opinion, the true Godzilla series.
Wow. What an ending.
Well, Yes. He fought literally everyone.
He did, and it looked like a
It was
2000s
literally just
movie.
a brawl. It's 2004, on the 50th anniversary of Godzilla's release and into the world. He went on just a beatdown spree. So if you like when I talk about entertainment, it was that movie is nothing but entertainment. That is Toho being like, all right, let's just relish in the legacy of monster fights,
And don't
and
get me wrong, I
you
was
know,
entertained.
oh
I
yeah,
was
you
very
can't.
entertained.
There's not a Godzilla movie that won't entertain you.
I was just confused is what
Yeah, it'll
happened.
that's a side effect. Absolutely.
There were
So,
people in like suits that enhanced
yeah, they
them.
were
Like,
super soldiers, yeah.
I don't
We'll
understand.
we'll get into that when we talk about the Millennium series
Please.
of Godzilla. The two versions of the original
Yes.
Godzilla versus Mothra and Godzilla Final Wars and
Yes. Zilla. I
1988's
forgot that one. So
Zilla.
yes. Oh no,
It
one and
does
a half
count.
hands.
It does count. And so
It's
okay.
canon.
Well, you would be not surprised to know that there are 36 currently Godzilla
That's a
films.
lot.
That is a lot. 32 of them were produced by Toho. One is produced by TriStars, that's 1988's Godzilla, and three are produced by Legendary Pictures, that being Godzilla, Godzilla King of All Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh, I forgot about those ones.
Yeah,
I've
so
seen those too.
yeah, and that's fair. So two hands, there you
Two
go. You've
hands.
graduated to two hands. You've got 8 films under your belt. Um, so yeah, that's a lot of movies, and that's what's crazy about that. Even if you go based on just the anniversary alone of 67 years of Godzilla, that's still on average about 2.5 movies every year,
Yes.
right?
That's
Like
nuts.
that's crazy. And at a time, Toho was pretty much doing that. They were releasing back to back
They wore
movies.
out that rubber suit.
Literally, there especially in shots of like Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, you can see so many shots where the rubber's falling off, it's decaying. Like,
Amazing.
yeah, and because that's literally what they would do is they would just finish filming one because honestly, these films aren't hard to bang out, right? Like
Mm.
a lot of it is just down to very practical special effects and getting a lot of repeating shots. And then you just do about 45 minutes of human characters, and then you've got a movie.
And then you just destroy some pagodas.
And generally, you're using characters from the last one. Like so many characters show up again, get a sequel or pop up back later that it's just like, hey, you know, let's go ahead and get our 3 films with Anguirus, right? And then we'll move on to Mothra, right? Like it's just like because
Yeah.
Godzilla has so many friends and they show up so often.
Question. This
Hmm.
is slightly off topic. When does King Ghidorah stop being monster from Planet X and start being King Ghidorah?
He technically never did.
Really?
Well, no.
Because
Okay,
that's what I've always known him as
so
King Ghidorah.
there is one in the Heisei series, where technically he's different, um, but technically also still could be the same.
Okay.
So, because I've mentioned a few times different series and eras and everything, and I did mention this back on our Godzilla versus King Kong one, but for that episode, we stayed very much on the subject of the film we were reviewing. Um, so, with this talking about all Godzilla all the time, it's worth going over the eras of Godzilla. Because, like I said, although there's been 67 years, it hasn't been 67 consecutive years. There's been a few breaks in between, and basically they came to know each grouping of Godzilla movies based on the reigning at the time in Japan.
Wow.
So you have the Showa era that comes from 1954 to 1975, the longest running series. Then you've got Heisei, which is the 1984 to 1995. And then you've got the Millennium era that I've mentioned a couple times that starts in '99 with Godzilla 2000 and runs until 2004 with Godzilla Final Wars that we've mentioned, being one of the shortest of the series, but um, that's probably some of my favorite Godzilla for sure.
Hmm.
And then you've also got the more recent Reiwa series that has gone on from 2016 to technically present. So Shin Godzilla and the Netflix Godzilla trilogy and the newest Godzilla Netflix series, Godzilla Singular Point, as well.
What a weird name for a series.
We are not talking about any of those, mostly because I haven't seen any of them.
Yeah.
As 2016 on, the new era of Toho Godzilla, I just haven't gotten into. They're very different. And while I don't have any opinions about their quality, and I mean that literally, I haven't seen them. I have no opinions overall of what they are as films. It's purely just looking at them in the trailers and being like, no, I'm not interested.
Mm.
So
And that's fair.
at some point, maybe
I-
we'll talk about that.
Who knows? I might love those ones.
Maybe
That does happen sometimes.
and I recommend everyone form their own opinions and try it. But if it helps, just think of the first series from the 50s to 70s, then you've got the 80s to 90s, and then you've got the 2000s.
Yes.
That's the eras of Godzilla, the trilogy of eras that have represented him most over the years. And so that said, obviously it started somewhere. It started with the first film. It was never supposed to get here. It was never expected to be this. 67 years, 32 films, all of these eras and all of these crossovers and all this. It was a film
Mm-hmm.
that was made because King Kong happened, actually.
Nice.
King Kong came first. If you can't do the math on the years, 1933 versus 1954, it came much earlier.
Yeah.
And it was that film that inspired filmmakers to come up with a way of doing a giant monster movie.
Yeah. Because
And
giant monster movies are fun.
yeah, and so whereas King Kong was largely done with stop motion, not really a craft of Japanese culture and film at the time. Um, they were, however, good at special effects, good at, um, well, I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than special effects. A lot of things that have come to be, largely because of technology now, originated with guys being clever with cameras for commercials, with
Yeah.
guys being like, hey, fireworks, I can do something with that. I don't have to rent a giant tank for my movie. I could make a miniature. Um, Miniatures were huge in Japanese filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
You add that with somebody in a suit instead of a tedious, time consuming stop motion character, and all of a sudden you've got the makings of a movie.
Yeah.
Um, Add on top of that, current political climate at the time. Um, you've got backstory and such
Yeah.
as well.
You've got a literal war being fought.
Yeah. Actually, just a few years prior to this, there was actually, because of the H bomb dropped, um, there was actually a contaminated fishing boat
Mm-hmm.
due to test firing. They were just out fishing. There was a test fire that happened, and the ensuing radiation actually reached the fishers, and one of them died from it. And several other, I mean, they just had lasting physical effects and everything. So, like, the not just the bombing of Hiroshima, but also just literally right before this film really released, they were continuing to see and feel the effects of really war. The first Godzilla movie is a movie and an allegory for war and the demon of nuclear war, right? That's why it's a fire-breathing nuclear lizard. It's the idea of to what end is our current science and weapons study?
Yeah.
Where does this lead? And for them and for the story they were trying to tell, they saw it leading to the world, nature retaliating.
Which is fair, honestly.
Yeah. And so in the first film, there's not a lot. Godzilla just shows up one day and destroys a bunch of stuff, and
A lot of pagodas.
most of the film is just dealing with it.
Yeah.
Like, most of the film is just being uncomfortable with the
Yeah.
damage of quote unquote war. Like,
Yeah, and to the point where, when we finally get to Dr. Eye Patch, that I cannot remember his name, um, like, it's insane the amount of, like, fighting back the humans do in this movie.
Yeah, it's
and all for naught.
yeah, and it's large. Yeah, it's largely minimal. It's last minute coming up with, oh, I can make something that can kill the beast. Um, the
Yeah,
oxygen destroyer. It literally uh just kills the oxygen so much so that it just. I mean, you need oxygen to
get
live.
some skeleton fish.
Not just to breathe, right? Like you need oxygen to be fleshy and alive.
Yeah,
You destroy the oxygen in an environment, you're going to kill whatever is in that environment. So the first film literally ends with Godzilla's death.
yeah.
Godzilla got turned to
Good
bones.
thing he's got a son.
And two different movies follow that plot thread up. Two different, very amazing movies continue that point. But at the end of the day, Godzilla died in his first movie.
Let me guess if I can. Okay, I
Which ones
think
followed it up?
yes. I
Okay.
think the second Mechagodzilla is
Nope.
the one. The first
The
Mechagodzilla.
third.
The
The third.
third. Okay. How
There's
many
three.
Mechagodzillas are there?
There's three. Yeah.
Jeez Louise. I knew it
One of
was
them
one
is
of them.
literally Mechagodzilla 2.
Wow. Gosh.
um,
The third
the other one,
Mechagodzilla. I knew it
you
was
won't
a
guess.
Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, yes, because it's my favorite characterization of both Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. Um,
You told me.
and because of Godzilla versus King Kong, it came up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I love how they tied that in.
Yeah. So yeah, very similarly, they did that with Ghidorah in that film. Do you have the guess of the other one?
The Godzilla versus Gamera.
Nope,
Dang
because
it.
that doesn't
Because that
exist.
was a guess.
Darn you. Um,
Maybe in this
you would
era.
never guess the other one. It's Godzilla versus Destroyer.
Okay, I've heard you say that a few times, but I never
Because
actually
it's so
seen
much
the
fun to say
movie.
Destroyer. And no, I'm not being insensitive, okay?
That's what it's called.
It's Destroyer. Like basically they were like, we can't call him Destroyer because that's too normal.
I'm
We're gonna
looking at your shelf and trying to figure out which one that
It's
is.
literally the devil.
Oh yeah, there he is.
Imagine Devil Godzilla, and you've got Destroyer. But he's named after the oxygen destroyer, Destroyer. Like he is what was created from the oxygen destroyer, and that was
Nerd.
at the time that was supposed to be the final movie to Godzilla at all. So much so that yet again they killed Godzilla, and that was in 1995. I kid you not. This was such a big deal. It ran on news stations.
Oh my
News
gosh.
stations reported Godzilla has been defeated. Like they
And then
literally
3 years
it
later.
was a world phenomenon. It was insane like what happened.
Is it like when they held a funeral service for Sadako?
I mean, it was pretty much that impactful, especially because like it was I mean, what a way to go out. It was huge. It was such a big deal. It's a fantastic film. And it's literally that. It's kind of dealing with the culmination of all that Toho had created, right? So you've got Godzilla who's literally going nuclear. He's melting down. Like so much so he's boiling water as he swims. As when he enters a city, he's melting buildings like he is nuclear.
He has become the elephant's foot.
So it's this idea of this dinosaur that's become this protector. Like it's one of those things where it's like even though good things have come from nuclear radiation, i.e., Godzilla, a giant protector, it still turns out bad.
Yeah.
It's again that idea of okay, nuclear research can lead to this and lead to that, but it can also end up doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the destroyer, the villain of it, where it's just like, hey, I'm literally the cross between the oxygen destroyer and Godzilla DNA, and I can destroy this whole world.
I am a monument to your sins.
Literally. So, what better way to really culminate in things, right? I mean, like I talk about between us off mic all the time because nobody cares about my Dragon Ball opinions, but I talk about so often how Dragon Ball GT is such a good ending to that anime because the last series literally deals with, hey, every time you made a wish, something bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
It deals with the idea of karma,
There's a
right?
panties dragon.
Every time they did any good in the entire anime led to an evil. it's kind of the same ending for Godzilla here, where it's like all the good still led to really a not good ending, although it ends well. It ends. I mean, they stop him from melting down. Obviously, they destroy
Obviously.
Destroyer, and you get the very ending is Godzilla Jr. roaring at the sunset, and it gives a hope that maybe there's going to be more, and there eventually was.
Yes,
Um,
after, America made it oops.
yes. So there's not. So I love how this conversation has kind of evolved and everything. Um, So from the original Godzilla to 1975, which I'm so glad that this series ended well too, it got to end with the terror of Mechagodzilla. You
Yes.
end with the greatest villain created in the original series, right? Um,
That's the third one.
what?
Second one?
What? No,
Mechagodzilla?
that's the first one.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, technically second because like
Listen, man, they're all called the
it's
same
Godzilla
thing.
versus Mechagodzilla. He destroys him. Then they
Yes.
rebuild him, and then he teams up with Titanosaurus and fights Godzilla.
He teams up with a
And
what?
Titanosaurus. He barks like a dog. He goes,
Wait. Is it that one?
what? No, that's King Caesar. So King Caesar is from the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Godzilla only beats Mechagodzilla because King Caesar. I'm not kidding. Google or YouTube video search King Caesar song. Oh my gosh, it takes 2.5 minutes to wake up this dog lion thing, and
Okay.
it's literally done by
Standing next
a
to
lady
Mechagodzilla, yeah.
singing at a mountain. I love it so much. King Caesar's amazing. He's the biggest puppy. Clifford the Red Dog can suck it. Um,
Ugh.
so much of this series, right? So although the Mechagodzilla movies end a little serious, a lot of those movies are just cash grabs, fun, entertainment, right? You've got Godzilla and Godzilla Jr. You've got Destroy All Monsters. You've got all these goofy ones in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really what it was is they were just making movies that they had the opportunity to at the time, so they got a lot of crossovers. That's where the trend of Godzilla having friends and reoccurring enemies came along, like Anguirus, who's like a giant dinosaur armadillo. You get Rodan, who's a pterodactyl. You get Mothra, who's a moth. By the way,
And a Mothra.
right, Rodan, another villain, Varen, and Mothra all had their own films and series, by the way. Like they were successful kaiju on their own, but not as successful as Godzilla. So they were literally like these popular kaiju made it big when they came in a Godzilla movie. Like people forget there was a movie, a black and white movie, Mothra.
Mm-hmm.
That was a thing. But no, she doesn't exist until Godzilla versus Mothra, which was one of my first VHSs actually.
Yeah, we still have
Um,
it.
Several of my first Godzilla movies are actually in the Showa series. So Godzilla versus Mothra, Godzilla versus Megalon, and Godzilla versus the monster from Planet X, or
Yes.
Godzilla versus Ghidorah. Um, and so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm nostalgic for these films. And when you think of goofy man in a rubber suit monster movies, these are probably what you would think of. But Godzilla does have serious movies, like I mentioned, and mind you, even in there, they do have many a time where they deal with like legitimate subjects. So there's like
Yes.
Godzilla versus Hedorah, and Hedorah is literally a sludge monster created from the pollution of man. So you talk about a monument. This is a poop monument to our sins, right? That's literally the subject, to the point that Godzilla like literally gets sick fighting him. Like the pollution is so bad, even Godzilla suffers.
Mm-hmm.
And literally there like it was made as a like feature length, like 75-minute long ad for pick up your trash.
Yes, not like
Take
Birdemic.
take care of the planet.
Yes.
Like it was literally just one big we should care about the world. It like it's crazy that they could just do that, but they could with Godzilla because these movies made so much money on such a small budget. They already
Yes.
had the suit, they used it, 19 times, um, and then yeah, you just throw poop at him, and there you go,
That's
movie.
what you do from a guy named Het.
But some of my really really favorite, because they're really really good movies, come from like the 80s to 90s, so the Heisei series. Not long. So you mentioned Ghidorah. Like when
Mm-hmm.
does he stop being the monster from Planet X, right? So The original plot was that there were aliens that had their own version of Godzilla, that being the three-headed dragon Ghidorah, or as he was originally introduced, Ghidra.
Oh.
Yeah, he was not originally Ghidorah. He's gone through so many names. He was the three-headed monster. He was the Astro Monster, the monster from Planet X, Ghidra, Ghidorah, King Ghidorah, Death Ghidorah. There's so many versions.
Ghidorah
Um,
Spice.
but in general, the consensus was he's a monster that aliens bring to take over Earth, and
Yes.
Godzilla defends Earth from Ghidorah. But in the 80s, they kind of did a little bit something different. So with this one, they basically started it off by doing the Halloween method of we're only going to follow up the first movie.
Of course they did.
So they premiered with the Return of Godzilla. Godzilla was a bad guy again. He is a representation of nuclear war and evil and everything. So that first film, 1984, releasing 30 years after the original, was a way to get back to the roots of we should be afraid of Godzilla, right? Later on, they do have a Godzilla versus King Ghidorah film, and in that, instead of being brought by aliens, he's brought by Futurians, people from the future, aka Americans.
That would
at least
definitely be something that Americans would do.
I do remember at least one of them was just American. So they come and they're like, "Hey, we can get rid of Godzilla by going back in time and removing the dinosaur from the island that got irradiated." So this was the first time they gave a backstory, by the way. Before this, it was just radiation equals Godzilla.
Yes.
How? We don't know. They eventually are like, well, a dinosaur.
Yeah, we hadn't reached the journey to the center of the earth.
A dinosaur in the 40s, 1940, by the way, that was just hanging out on this island near testing sites was irradiated. Yeah. It was called a Godzillasaurus.
Oh my god.
So they go back in time and they remove the dinosaur and drop him in the ocean, basically. They're like, yeah, he can't swim. And in place of him, put three little Dorats. Three little bats, golden bats, that eventually, because of radiation, fuse and turn into a three-headed dragon. So Ghidorah's just three little bat babies that got irradiated. Now, technically, and that's why I said, technically the Futurians could be aliens from Planet X and just could have been lying. So technically it could still be true.
I was about to ask what they were smoking, but it was the 80s, so it was cocaine.
Yeah, that like time travelers would... I don't know, but I love the convoluted plot of how they couldn't just have... So every monster in this series gets an explanation. No monster just appears out of nowhere. Like, they couldn't just have a giant golden dragon appear out of nowhere. No, they had to explain where Ghidorah came from.
Yes.
Before this, Godzilla fought a giant plant monster that was literally the cross between Godzilla DNA and plant DNA. Because Godzilla has, like, Wolverine powers in that he can heal very quickly. And so they were like, hey, if we cross this with plants, maybe we could make something that could cure cancer. Right? And instead it made a giant Godzilla plant monster called Biollante.
Biollante. Okay, yeah. I've heard of Biollante.
Has one of the most beautiful movie posters. These films have some of the best movie posters.
I'm gonna look at and give it a
King Ghidorah. You get Mothra. Has the same backstory, right? These two little twin fairies, are her guardians and come through and say, "Hey, you should be kinder to Earth, otherwise a giant moth is going to come punish you."
Okay, that is pretty dope.
Yeah. So, but here's the kicker.
Here's the kicker. Sir.
Mothra was never the moth that was going to punish humanity for their sins.
No.
It was her brother, Batra.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. A dragonfly, essentially. Evil moth. And
everybody knows that the evil counterpart to a moth is a dragonfly.
So technically it should be Godzilla versus Mothra versus Batra. But what's beautiful is that Batra and Mothra make up in the end and carry Godzilla into the sea and drown him.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Siblings.
And then you get Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2.
The sequel.
So this is the second Mechagodzilla. Where was the first one? Don't ask. This is the smooth, like we think like he looks like RoboCop. I'm
He
just gonna be
does
honest.
look like RoboCop.
Mechagodzilla 2 looks like RoboCop. Smooth and like blue silver and everything.
That's
And
the
so
big one, right?
no, that's Kiryu. That's
Okay.
my favorite Mechagodzilla. I don't have a Mechagodzilla 2.
Oh, I need to get you one.
Yeah, so if
Sorry.
everybody just Googles Mechagodzilla 2, you'll see it.
Here's
You'll
the
kind of
thing.
see what I mean.
Right above us is a shelf that's full of John's Godzilla figures and
Yeah.
kaiju figures.
Mhm.
And so I keep looking up and being
For
like, is
reference.
that one? Is that one?
Next is Godzilla versus Space Godzilla.
Pardon me?
So when Godzilla was fighting that plant, remember that?
Biology, yeah.
Yeah. So he blew him up.
Exploded.
The spores of the plant traveled to space, got trapped in a black hole, came back, and was Godzilla.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can you take me through it one more time?
Godzilla in
Godzilla
space.
in space.
Kidnaps regular Godzilla's son.
Godzilla Jr.?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god.
Because Godzilla has a son. That's a thing that happens in this series.
Okay, asexually or who to mama?
Asexually.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Good for them.
That's always been a plot thread. Don't know why it ticked people off in the 90s, but that's always been a plot thread. There has never been a mama.
Godzilla is ace. Get over it.
And then comes Godzilla versus Destroyer, where the mantle is effectively passed to Godzilla Jr., although Godzilla Jr., that never happens. Like that the series ends and when they come
Yeah.
back to it, it's a completely different Godzilla.
Yes.
So
But
yeah.
Godzilla Jr.'s still there.
I run through these to give enough about the plot so that hopefully people are just like, this can't be real. Like,
It is.
this can't be the plot, but it is, and it's amazing. And you can't believe that these movies are so dang well made for being so silly sometimes.
Imagine every single episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 you've ever seen.
There's a Godzilla versus Destroy All Monsters.
Yes, there is.
On.
I know.
Mr. Science Theater.
I've never watched that one
I
because it's
love
hard
it
to
so
get.
much. And so then we come to the Millennium series, named because we entered a new millennia. We got to 2000, Godzilla 2000 then. And this was the first Godzilla movie and only I got to see in theaters. Because
Wow.
again, it released internationally as a response to TriStars.
You know what? That's probably where the confusion came from.
But
Because I remember seeing the posters.
And it was only 2 years. They banged this out in 2 years. They designed a new Godzilla.
They were pissed.
Like, literally. And what's crazy, too, and although it's not really a big tidbit, so Toho had a pool at their studios because that's what they would use to film all the shots of Godzilla coming out of the water.
Yeah.
Right? That's why they never filmed swimming shots. It was always just shots of him in the water, standing in the ocean.
Yeah.
He's not that tall. It's because it's a dude in a pool. They had destroyed the pool in 1995 after Godzilla vs. Destroyer. They had to digitally do all of the ocean shots for this movie. And any of these movies, they were like, that's fine. We have to do this movie. And I feel like I just have to say, without giving it too much time, I actually really enjoy the 1988 Godzilla film.
It was the only one I had seen for the longest time.
I loved it when I was a kid watching it. I enjoy watching it now. It's still a fun movie, and canonically, it still works in that is an irradiated lizard creature.
It's an iguana
that exists in the Godzilla universe. Like, it's not Godzilla, although to American audiences they call it that. But I mean, yeah, it's a fine movie.
And it makes sense in the context of the movie too.
Exactly. I mean, like, here's the thing. The reason they call it Godzilla is because a fisherman sees it when it attacks his boat and he says, Gojira. Why else would he say that if he's not heard of Gojira?
Yeah.
So it's literally just him thinking he got attacked by Godzilla, but really it was some other monster, and Americans got a hold of it and were like, oh, Godzilla. No. But okay.
Like Americans do.
Right? It did lead to a great show, though, on Kids WB. Godzilla series ran alongside the Men in Black series, and I loved both of them.
Dude, I remember that Burger King toys for both of those
series.
Yeah,
it was so good. So they respond by creating their own series. Here's the thing. Now, critically, was it a failure? Yes. Can you still enjoy those movies? Yes. I don't think Toho was just going out and being like, they're garbage. Like, I like their, very prideful response in that it's like, Godzilla's popular again, but not for the right reasons. So we should make a good movie to appease people. We're not going to do bad interviews about TriStar. We're not going to
Yeah.
run anybody through the mud. We're just going to make a good movie, guys.
They're not going to go after Matthew Broderick.
Like that's such a good way to handle it. And it made some of my favorite movies. So Godzilla versus Godzilla 2000. It's not versus anything, although he does fight a space monster. Um, it's just a really dang good movie. I really enjoy it. It's a good introductory movie to Godzilla. Um, he fights some praying mantises. He fights Mothra and King Ghidorah again, of course. But the biggest deal, and like we've made mention to, is he fights Mechagodzilla again. And to me, the definitive version of Mechagodzilla, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Godzilla 2000, much like the last one, labeled itself as a sequel to the original.
Mm-hmm.
You go from 1954 to Godzilla 2000, which is a long time, but just bear with me.
just go with it, man.
Godzilla 1954 has to happen because when you come to Mechagodzilla versus Mechagodzilla, in this series, they built Mechagodzilla literally off the bones of the original Godzilla. So the first film happened, they dug up those bones and put a robot around it.
Cool.
And then you've got Mechagodzilla.
Cool.
It's the best explanation. It's literally
It's such
the
a good
best
explanation that they reused it
in the new movies for Ghidorah for Mechagodzilla. Like
was
it's
very
so
cool.
good that they're just like, yeah, we can't do better than that. And so what's cool about it is Mechagodzilla is not just so in this. The reason they do that is because in this era in particular, they really focus on how the Earth responds to Godzilla, in that they beef up their military. They actually pretty capably handle themselves.
Yeah.
And part of that involves having a giant robot, right?
Like I don't imagine.
Like having a Gundam Godzilla.
Yeah.
And so like that's literally what they do.
Here's the thing, guys. We know Japan has
They have Gundams.
They have We've seen the Gundams.
Right?
They need to stop.
You think
hiding
they're
them.
just statues?
No.
No,
They're Gundams.
They're Gundams.
Hallelujah, Haptism is in there.
And so that it's all the justification you need for why is there a giant robot Mechagodzilla, and also why is he evil? Because the original Godzilla within him wakes up.
He bad boy.
And if you remember the original movie, he's not a good guy. And so one of the best, and it's also a really good design. It literally just looks like Robo Godzilla. It looks like the Dragon Zord. It is just so cool. And so yeah, it's one of my favorite Godzilla movies ever. It's really good.
His name is Kiryu?
His name is Kiryu. Yes, kill you.
Yes, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like the incredibly original name that Light Yagami chose. Kira.
Right.
Yeah.
It's literally that. And then and so the Millennium series, very short, but it ends off with Godzilla Final Wars, which like I said is one of my favorites because it's literally just
so nuts.
Monster beatdown. It's so good. You can rent it on Amazon Prime and YouTube, and it is highly worth it.
You can just sit back and experience that movie.
It's so good.
It happens to you. That's how you watch that movie.
And so, and so then we get to, like I said, the newer series that I haven't seen, and also the American movies, the newer ones and everything by Legendary and Netflix. And so yeah, so you've got 67 years of film history, of cultural history, of all of this representation. Like, Godzilla's gone on to mean so much and represent so much, especially to Japanese culture and everything, but also just in general. Like I said, so many messages that it deals with, whether it's take care of the planet, take care of each other, whether it's, hey, we should study science for the benefits that it can have for humanity, but we should always be careful that our study of science doesn't lead to weaponizing science. So many things that are just so relevant and real to anyone.
And you just want to have fun sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what the monsters are there for.
Exactly.
And so, you get a message and you get cool monster movies, and it's so cool even just to watch them and try and figure out stuff. Like, where does the real end and the practical begin? When is it a building and when is it a miniature? When is, all of that stuff. Godzilla as a whole is such an achievement. Like it's such a thing to sit back and just be like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and the fact that we have 67 years worth, all of these dozens of films, is quite a cool thing, I
Yeah.
think.
It's hard not to sit back and look at it and be impressed by the achievement that is Godzilla.
Yeah, and I think that's what keeps me still to this day interested is it's not just anymore about the cool monster fights. Um, it's evolved. If nothing else, it's good cinema, and at the very least, it kind of makes you think. And
Popcorn movie.
sometimes it's good for movies to do that. It movies are art after all, and art should make you think. And I think Godzilla, although being known for a lot of things, um, one of them should definitely be for having a message to it,
Yeah.
if people are listening. And so I think any of the films are very much worth it. But you can definitely hit me up on Twitter, and I will give you direct recommendations for sure. And so, yeah.
And you know what? I am going to volunteer now to let you pick 5 Godzilla movies that I have to watch.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then we'll come back later.
Maybe I'll make do that and make a tweet about it and be like that give it to everyone as well.
You should
Just
do
put it
that
out there and be like, "Hey, these are what we're going to watch and talk about eventually."
eventually.
At this point in the new year maybe sometime, but like, here's your fair warning. Watch them if you will. Um
There you go.
yeah, that'll be fun.
5 Godzilla movies. Or
Um
just kaiju movies in general.
yeah, this is one of those where this was we don't have too many people that listen to the podcast or follow us that I know are Godzilla fans and everything. This was one of those more I like this thing. We should talk about it kind
Yeah.
of things. Um, and every now and then we do those kinds of things, especially on NerdyVerse,
Hmm.
because we have so many other things that we really love. It's not hard for us to talk about Star Wars, but sometimes it's other things like this. Like, who am I going to talk to to about Godzilla, right? Like, who do I know that likes Godzilla? And so it's like the podcast is the perfect place because it puts it out there, and I'm pretty sure now I'll have people chiming in and saying, "No, I actually like those movies. I remember these movies or I've seen
Yeah.
these." And so it's all about having the conversation, putting it out there and finding other interested and weird and nerdy folks, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Um, you can stay tuned. This is a double feature week, due to our schedule, and so this is not the only episode you'll be getting this week. You'll also be getting a Star Wars centric episode. Like I said, we're talking about the sequel trilogy and what we love about them. So make sure that you are
Yes.
subscribed, and following us on socials to know when that drops and to be one of the first to listen and check it out. Um, and that said, the first one is about The Force Awakens, and while it's a little late to get us anything on that, the next is The Last Jedi. So feel free to at us on Twitter,
Please talk to us about The
send
Last
us
Jedi.
messages, whatever, about The Last Jedi, any of that stuff. If you want opinions or if you want to share a thought, that may make it onto the episode. We make no promises, but definitely hit us up. We'd love to feature you and everything. So um, that's the future of what we've got for this week. And pretty much as far as Star Wars goes, the rest of this year, that's going to take us through the rest of the year. Next week, for Nerdyverse, we are starting our end of the year series, where we will each week be looking at a different Spider Man trilogy.
Yes, we
We'll
will.
be, of course, starting off with arguably the definitive Spider-Man trilogy.
We could argue about it.
Um, duology and a half, maybe, or however you choose to see it. But the Raimi films, Spider-Man 1,
Yes.
2, and 3.
Love Sam Raimi.
Um, then after that, we'll talk about the two Amazing Spider-Man movies. And then after that, because by then it will be a trilogy, we will talk about the Marvel Spider-Man
Yes.
trilogy, which is
Tom
so
Holland
weird to
being a
say.
precious little boy.
And so, very much looking forward to that. That said, if you want to rewatch those before listening, or if you want to make sure you watch No Way Home before we talk about that at the end of the year, then
Yeah.
make sure you get your tickets. If you can safely visit a theater and you're vaccinated and all that, do so because it's going to be so worth it to see in film on the big screen. So definitely do that. Um, and so that's our year. There you go. That's what we're planning on doing.
Yeah.
In between that, we might have some live streams. We're a little busy right now, so we will see. But all the more reason to make sure you're subscribed and following us on social medias and all that good stuff. All the links are in the description below. So, with that, I mean, that's all I got.
Later, skaters.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.